Hi all, today we will discuss top 50 Kafka with a Spring Boot real-time interview question answer 2014 24. Sorry. So what all are the important questions in Kafka related with the Spring Boot we will discuss here. So first we will discuss here basic Kafka concept. So the interviewer may ask, have you used Kafka? If yes, then what is Kafka? What is the difference between Kafka, zookeepers, when to use Kafka and all? And the next question they will ask, what is the main component of Kafka? Like we have a producer, consumer, topic, partitions, process, and zookeeper. So what all are the main component in Kafka? Then the next question they ask, what is Kafka topic? Why we are using Kafka topic? And the next question is, what is Kafka partition? When to use Kafka partition? And the next question is, what is the role of zookeepers in Kafka? Why we are using zookeepers in Kafka? So these all are the Kafka basic interview questions. Now we will go for the Spring Boot integrations related Kafka questions. So while we integrate with the Spring Boot in Kafka, so the interviewer may ask like, how do you integrate Kafka with the Spring Boot? What all are the components and all we will discuss while we are integrating in that. So we have add Kafka uh, with the Spring Boot integration. We have a Spring Kafka dependency that need to be added in our pom.xml and some configuration which we have to add in the application.property. Now the next question is, what is Kafka template in a Spring Boot? And the next question is, how do you create a Kafka consumer in a Spring Boot? So what all are the annotations we are using in Kafka consumer at the rate Kafka listener? What is the use of Kafka listeners and all? The next question is, how do you handle Kafka message serialization and deserialization in a Spring Boot? So we have a Kafka serializer and Kafka deserializer, which is used to use the custom serializations and deserialization. And the next question is, what is Kafka listener container factory in a Spring Boot? What all are the Kafka listener container factory in a Spring Boot? So at the rate Kafka listeners is there. So these all are the annotation. Coming for the real time use cases, we have a with this Kafka with a Spring Boot. The interviewer may ask, describe the real time use case with Kafka with a Spring Boot can be used, where we will use, what all are the scenarios, what all are the things where to use Kafka and all. The next question is, how do you ensure message ordering in Kafka? So, and the next question is, how do you handle message failure in Kafka? How do you handle message failure in Kafka consumer? The next question is, how do you achieve the high availability with Kafka? And the next question is, what is the role of Kafka Connect in real-time data processing? So these all are the real-time scenarios based interview question with the Kafka with the Spring Boot. Now coming for some of the advanced topic, which is the interviewer will ask some high-level interview questions with the Kafka with the Spring Boot. So the next is, explain the Kafka stream and its use cases. So what is Kafka stream? When to use and what all are the use cases is there? The next question is, what is Kafka consumer group? When to use Kafka groups? The next question is, how do you manage Kafka offset in a Spring Boot? The next question is, what is Kafka rebalanced and how do you handle it? What all are the those Kafka rebalance and all? How do you monitor Kafka with the Spring Boot? So this is the next question. How do you monitor Kafka with the Spring Boot? Now coming for the configuration and performance tuning. So these all are the Kafka with the Spring Boot related common interview questions. While go for the configuration and performance tuning. So the next question is, what are some common Kafka configuration for performance tuning? So this replication dot factors, run num dot partitions, logs retentions hours, message dot max bytes, batch size, lingers dot ms like this. The next question is, how do you configure a Kafka producers in a Spring Boot? The next question is what is the idempotence in Kafka and how it is achieved? What is the next question is how do you secure a Kafka cluster? When to use Kafka clusters and all to secure data purpose. So how do you the next question is how do you implement Kafka retry mechanism in Spring Boot? The next question is related for common issues and troubleshoot. So suppose if any issues or troubleshoot if you want with the Kafka using a Spring Boot applications, then these all are the interviewers questions. Like how do you handle Kafka brokers failure? What all are the common error you might encounter with Kafka and how do you troubleshoot them? How do you handle the Kafka message duplications if any duplications will be there? Then what all are the best practice of Kafka logs management? How do you handle schema evolutions in Kafka meshes? So these all are that. Now coming for the practical implementations. So if you go for the practical implementation, so these type of uh, questions they may ask, like write a Spring Boot application to produce a message to Kafka topic. Write a Spring Boot applications which need to be produce a message in Kafka topic. So these all are the annotations at the rate Spring Boot application annotations which have our Spring Boot applications. At the rate bin at the rate bins we have Kafka template while we are using. There we can create at the rate bin like that. So these all are the code copy. If you see here, so we have based on that we can create a beans and then rest controllers where we have a get mapping request params and all. Then we have to send the by using Kafka template to send the message. The next question is how do you configure multiple Kafka cluster in a Spring Boot? So it's a very important question how we will configure multiple Kafka clusters in a Spring Boot application. Next question is how explain the role of Kafka stream in building real-time application. So what is the role of Kafka stream to build a real-time applications and all? Now the next question is how do you use Kafka with relational data base in a Spring Boot? Next question is describe the scenario where we need to implement a custom serializer in Spring in Kafka. So these all are the Kafka related interview question. Now coming for the design patterns and the best practice. So what with the Spring Boot and Kafka. So what all are the some best practice for designing the Kafka based architectures? And the next question is how do you ensure data consistency between Kafka and other system? Next question is how do you handle large message in Kafka? Next question is what is Kafka log compaction and when to use it? Next question is what do you implement transactional message with Kafka? So these all are the important questions. Now coming for the some interview specific tips related for the Kafka with the Spring Boot requirement. So how do you explain your experience with Kafka with the Spring Boot in interview? What all are the key metrics you monitor in Kafka based applications? How do you handle schema changes in Kafka stream application? What is the difference between Kafka and traditional message broker? How do you implement Kafka message filtering mechanism? So these all are there. Now coming for the testing and debugging, how do you test a Kafka based Spring Boot application? What tools do you use for debugging in Kafka issues? And how do you handle back pressures in Kafka consumer? What is Kafka ISR and its significant? And how do you handle Kafka version upgrade in a Spring Boot application? So these all are the top 50 Kafka related interview questions. So if your requirement related to switch a job based on the Kafka with Spring Boot requirements and all, then you can prefer this top 50 questions with the Kafka and Spring Boot real time interview question. Yeah, thank you.